Hello and welcome to this week's mini module. My name is Rebecca and I'll be taking you through the changes to the 2022 version of ISO 27001. So let's get started. During this mini module, we will focus on the new versions of ISO 27001 and the changes to ISO 27002. We will look at how the clauses and control categories have changed and what new requirements have been introduced. We will then take a look at the new concept of control attributes and, of course, the timeline for transition. The first change to the ISO 27000 family was seen back in February 2022 with the release of ISO 27002. This is the guidance document for implementation and supports the ISO 27001 standard. The release of the guidance document gave us some insight into the 27001 changes, so many of us started planning for change at that point. The implementation of ISO 27001 should always be based on the guidance laid out in ISO 27002. So when purchasing the new version of the standard, you should also budget for the purchase of the guidance document. In October 2022, the long-awaited release of ISO 27001 happened. And the first thing we noticed was the title change. This now includes the words privacy protection. There are actually no major changes in relation to privacy, as the standard had previously addressed the protection of personal data, but it is nice for those who work in both privacy and information security to see that change. ISO 27001-2022 replaces all previous versions of the standard, and as of now, you are no longer able to start a fresh certification to the 2013 version. All certifications will be to the new version of the standard moving forward. Let's start with the changes to Annex A or Table A1. Previously, there were 13 control categories which addressed areas of control from mobile device management to people and physical security, and of course networks and communications security. There was, however, a fair amount of overlap between controls from Annex A. This has now been rectified with the merging of similar controls and splitting Annex A into just 4 control themes. The 4 control themes are organisational controls, for which there are 37, technological controls, for which there are 34, physical security controls, for which there are now 14, and lastly 8 people controls. You will notice that the objectives for control groups have been removed and instead control attributes and purpose have been introduced. The controls have been reduced from 114 down to 93, but this does now make more sense when planning for the management system. 11 new controls have been introduced, and for the new controls, many of us have implemented these already as part of good practice, but they are now explicit within the ISO 27001 standard. So let's take a look at what they cover. Here we'll have a look at the new controls that feature within the new version of the standard. Control 5.7, Threat Intelligence, is designed to ensure that as an organisation we have sources where we can get information about new or emerging threats. This information can be used as part of a risk assessment or threat modelling. Control 5.23 is information security for the use of cloud services. This requirement is in place to ensure that the use of cloud services is secure and to ensure that you implement access management, availability requirements, governance and disaster recovery. Control 5.30 addresses business continuity for ICT. This is a control you are already likely to have implemented, as your business continuity and disaster recovery plans should already address information communications technology, readiness and resilience. For those of you scratching your heads on this one, my advice is to conduct a business impact analysis on the use of communications technology and assess what you need in place to ensure that if the worst happens, you can get cloud services back online quickly and retrieve any data. Control 7.4 is another one many of us already have implemented, physical security monitoring. This can be implemented by using CCTV or performing physical access reviews. Control 8.9, Configuration Management. This requires us to include security configuration for organisational assets. Examples of this could be setting up a new laptop and ensuring that security is included within the standard build. This can include ensuring that BIOS encryption is applied, anti-malware software is installed, and that the device is password protected. Control 8.10 addresses information deletion. Previously, ISO 27001 required controls for the disposal of data, but this control is now specific to data deletion, so addresses all manner of disposal, including secure wiping of devices. Control 8.11 is all about data masking. This is a wonderful nod to the Data Protection Act, or GDPR as some of you may know it. This control addresses anonymization and pseudonymization techniques which can be used to hide data. Using these techniques helps us to mask personal data or other data, which reduces the chance of data breach. These techniques also help those of us who are required to answer subject access requests, as we're required to hide or remove the personal data of others when making disclosures. Control 8.12, Data Leakage Prevention. This is another control that many of us are likely to have in place already. But how do we prevent data leakage? Well, first we must identify where the data can be leaked from, and again we need to consider networks, cloud services, devices, people and premises, and design controls to prevent data being obtained in an unauthorized way. Control 8.16, Monitoring Activities. This control is all about what you implement to monitor your systems, services, applications, and more. This could be IDS or IPS, which is busy monitoring your network for anomalies. It could be software you use to monitor endpoints, or even how you go about monitoring behaviors. It's all relevant to this control. 8.23, Web Filtering. Again, this is another control that is likely to already be implemented. Web filtering simply blocks access to a range of dangerous or harmful areas of the internet and can include blocking access to gambling sites, pornography, malware-infected sites, violence and gore, plus much, much more. 8.28, Secure Coding. Well, this is one for the developers out there. This control requires code to be written in a high-level language which follows strict principles to guard against the accidental introduction of security vulnerabilities, which are often eventually exploited by hackers. The OWASP Top 10 is an absolute must for developers, so make sure you head over to the OWASP website, as this will give you the insight you need to implement this control effectively. Now let's take a look at the controls that have been merged. To all of us, this will make perfect sense. Groups of controls which address different areas of the same process have been merged into one. The technical committees who write ISO standards have simplified the controls without taking away from the requirements, and this appears to be a great improvement to the standard. As you can see from the information on screen, many controls have been merged into a single control. The requirement for information security policies and the review of those policies is now a single requirement, and most of us will already be managing control A5.11 and A5.12 as a merged control already. The same applies to all other merged controls. Many of us have implemented the individual controls as a single process, and often we write into policy as a single process. So it makes perfect sense for the technical committees to have made these changes. Control attributes are a new feature of ISO 27002, which is the guidance for implementation. Control objectives are out and attributes are in. Now we are looking at control types, whether they are preventive, detective or corrective. This is nothing new for the standard or any ISO management system standard. We have always implemented these control types. but now they are a clear attribute within ISO 27002. The information properties remain, and they are as we've always known them: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We safeguard these data properties. Cybersecurity concepts have been introduced to the standard. These are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. For those of you who have watched our Cybersecurity Basics mini module, you will know that we refer to this as onion security, which is the best way to build business resilience. We first identify threats, weaknesses, and gaps, and then apply protection to keep assets secure. We implement monitoring activities to detect threats, anomalies, and other issues so that we may respond quickly and effectively in mitigating any threat or risk to information or their associated assets. And when the worst happens, we can recover from disruptions, emergencies, and even disasters in an effective manner. This is called resilience. Operational capabilities include governance, asset management, data protection, and human security. And lastly, security domains, which include governance and ecosystem resilience. Key changes to clauses have also been made, such as the introduction of clause 6.3. This addresses planning for change. You will note there is an error within ISO 27001-2022 on the contents page. 6.3 does not appear on the contents, but is indeed found on page 5 of the standard. This is not a new requirement. 6.3 also features in ISO 9001 and it has exactly the same requirements. Planning for change has also always been a feature of ISO 27001, as in the 2013 version of the standard, Control A1212 addressed change control. Clause 4.2, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties, now asks which of the requirements will be addressed through the security management system. A minor change has also gone ahead to clause 6.2. It now requires you to determine the frequency in which ISMS objectives will be monitored and available as documented information. These are subclauses D and G, which have been added to clause 6.2. Interestingly, clauses 613, 8.1, 9.1, 9.2, 10.1 and 10.2 have been reorganised, but the requirements remain the same. There are other small changes to clause requirements which are included within Strident's full transition training course. We offer this course to any organisation, so drop us a line if this is of interest to you. As already mentioned, the new version of ISO 27001 was published back in October of 2022. Organisations had until the 31st of October this year to certify to the old version of the standard. That time period is now over. All new ISO 27001 certifications are now to be to the 2022 version from October 2023 onward. Organisations who've already certified to the old version of the standard have until the 31st of October 2025 to complete their transition to the new version. This is a very short time frame considering the work you will need to complete and to get your transition audit booked with your certification body. Be under no illusion. Certification bodies are very busy with the transition audits and most have a 6-month lead time. My advice is to get your transition work done now and book your transition audit as soon as possible. The organisations who are wishing to wait until 2025 will struggle against the crowd of orgs who are all attempting the same thing. You must not let your current certificate reach its expiry before you have completed your transition audit. And don't forget, your transition body needs time to get your transition report through their risk and compliance checks before it can be approved by UCAS. So from now, you are up against the clock. If you need help in understanding and implementing the changes, you need help training staff, or help getting your certification booked, get in touch with Strident and we can help make the transition easy for you. That brings us to the end of this mini module. Thanks for watching. If you need any help with ISO 27001 transition, implementation or training, please get in touch. Strident offer a suite of ISO standards to help boost and grow your business. Thanks again for your time, and I will see you on the next module.